My son's net worth at 1 year old is greater than what my net worth was at 22 years old. Than my net worth at 22. And so he has a 22-year head start already just because I have the foresight and the intentionality of setting him up for success. So make sure that you open up an investment account for your child. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Financial Freedom Fast Lane. And remember, the quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to enjoy it. And I'm your host, George Achampong. And I'm super excited about today's episode because my son just turned one literally about a week ago. I can't hear that without thinking about that. So as a matter of fact, I'm recording this episode at 12:30 a.m. and I'll tell you why in a second. But I thought it would be great, since my son just turned one a week ago, right, to talk about 5 financial tips that you can do, right, as a new father, right, or a father in general. You don't have to be a new father, or maybe you're somebody who's planning to be a father, and these tips could be helpful. These are things that I did in my first year of fatherhood, and I just wanted to share them with you. Now, why did I think this episode could be important at this point in time? One, like I said, my son just turned 1, but 2, because there's kind of a certain set of circumstances that are happening right now, which is the reason why I'm recording at 12:30 in the morning, right? And so as a new father, right, like your schedule is definitely going to be different, right? If you're an ambitious guy, you have a lot going on, you're not really operating on your own schedule, your own timeline anymore, right? Your son or your daughter or your child is going to need you, and you have to show up for them, right? This particular weekend, I actually had a 4.5-hour workshop, which was super great. So if you're watching this and you attended the workshop, kudos to you. We had an amazing time. We had over 200 people show up. It was great, right? And so my wife is actually doing a keynote in Cabo, St. Lucas. Is that how you say it? And so my son stayed back with me, and I had my mom watch him while I was doing the workshop. But other than that, now I'm back on full-time daddy duty, right? And so, you know, I had to give my son a bath, we had to eat, we had playtime, went by one of our investment properties. And within all that, right, there was just couldn't really find time to record this video. Now, I probably could have recorded it another day at another time, but I don't know when that time is. And truth be told, as silly as this sounds, I actually try to record my content around when I get my haircut. I'm about 2 or 3 days outside of when I got my haircut, but it's still kind of fresh. I think so, right? And naturally, you want to look your best on camera. And so if I don't get it, I felt like if I didn't get it done today or tonight, this morning, then I didn't know when I was going to be able to get it done. And now that I've committed to be consistent and show up for you guys every single week, I had to find a way to get it done. And so here we are at 12:30 a.m. Now, to prove it, not saying you guys don't believe me, but I might have to actually pause this episode if my son decides he wants to wake up, because he's been a little restless. So I'm not sure if you guys can see that. But yeah, he is asleep right now, and I'm crossing my fingers that I will be able to get through this episode. All right, so let's get to it. So the first thing I did in my son's first year of life is I updated our estate planning documents, right? It's very common to hear people talk about generational wealth, but you cannot have generational wealth if you don't have a generational wealth plan, right? And so it's very, very important to me that I had that documentation in place, because this is something that I stand on, and I want my son to have a fruitful legacy, but I also know that I want it to be documented and outlined so that he has a blueprint to follow, right? And that was very important to me. So I made sure that we updated our estate plan to include him, so that, you know, whether I live a long, healthy life, which I fully intend to, like we all do, or whether I have an untimely passing, I want to make sure that my son is fully prepared and has everything that he needs to live his best life, right? So the first thing that I did was I updated our estate planning documents, right? The second thing that I did is I opened up an investment account for my son, right? I'm going to do another episode on how I plan to make my son a millionaire by the time he's 18 or 21, probably closer to 18. And I'll break down exactly how I'm going to do that. But in order for us to do that, his money has to start working for him, right? So he's going to have, he already has assets. He has more, let me put it to you like this. My son's son's net worth at 1 year old is greater than what my net worth was at 22 years old. Let that sink in, right? My son's net worth at 1 year old was greater than my net worth at 22. And so he has a 22-year head start already, just because I had the foresight and the intentionality of setting him up for success. So make sure that you open up an investment account for your child, right? I don't care whether you put $10 a month, $10 a week, $100 a month, whatever you can start with. It is a powerful, powerful action step that you can take in order to help your child build wealth, right? So that's the second thing I did. The third thing is put your child on payroll, if possible, right? Obviously, you want to make sure that you're ethical and compliant and you're doing it the right way, but put your child on payroll. So I have a unique situation, right? And even more so than me, but my wife is an influencer. She does a lot of brand partnerships. And as a result of that, now that she's a mother, right, this becomes a new brand pillar for her. And so as a result, different brands have reached out and wanted to partner with her in order to do brand collaborations, right? Specifically for baby stuff. Now, these brand collaborations literally could not happen without my son, right? He literally is the model. He is the reason why those particular collaborations happen. So now we can put our son on payroll. And the benefit of that is that the IRS allows you to pay your child up to a certain amount. It's just shy of $13,000. The number just updated from 2022. So I will explain on the video on how I plan to make my son a millionaire, because that's part of the strategy, those exact details. But just know that it's right around $13,000 that you can pay your kid, and they won't have to owe any taxes, right? And the best part about that is not only can you pay them and they won't have to pay any taxes, it's going to be a tax deductible expense to you as the owner of the business, right? Then you can invest that money on their behalf with the investment account that you just opened, right? So that's an amazing strategy. It's great for your business. It's great for your child. And so that's definitely one thing that you want to do for your child when they are born, right? And if they're already born and they're, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, now you can do it for them, right? All right. So those are the first 3 things I did. The fourth thing that I did, this is more practical. Don't worry about having all the fancy baby stuff. Like a lot of that stuff, they really just don't need. So for example, they sell baby blenders. A blender is a blender. Don't use it. They sell these bottle sterilizers. I mean, maybe there's a use case for it, but honestly, you don't need it. Between washing it by hand or putting it in the dishwasher, it's really not necessary. Babies and weddings are kind of the same. They know that a woman will spend anything on her wedding, and they know that a mom will spend anything for their child, right? So they come up with all this stuff that you don't need, these special Tupperware containers. Truth be told, we just got my son a crib because he had this little bassinet, right? In the first couple months, he didn't really sleep in that. He was kind of sleeping with us. And again, this is not a parenting podcast or episode, so I'm not going to get into the details of if your kid should be in your bed or not, right? But he stayed with us, and then he was in the bassinet, and then we had a little bit bigger bassinet he was able to stay in for a while. And so it really wasn't necessary. So people try to have their nursery together, in the first, before the kid's here, and the kid doesn't even care about any of that stuff, doesn't need any of that stuff. Parents are stretching themselves extra thin for no reason. Half that stuff you're not going to use. It's not that deep. It's not that important. So I strongly encourage you to not go overboard with the fancy kid stuff, right? They don't need it. It's not that important. So definitely don't worry about it, right? And last but not least, do not go crazy on clothes. Do not go crazy on fancy clothes. Your kid is gonna I'm looking at pictures from my son because it's his birthday, right? His birthday just passed. So I'm looking at pictures from him from just a few months ago. He just keeps changing, keeps growing, right? It's just it's no point to spend a lot of money on clothes. They're gonna grow out of them so fast. That's the first reason. The second reason is they're gonna spit up and throw up, right, and mess up those clothes all the time, right? It's literally no point. Like, don't worry about it. Do not get fancy clothes. Do not get fancy shoes. You can get some really nice stuff from like, H&M or Target, or just places that are really a lot more economical. And in the spirit of sustainability, it seemed like my friends and people in our network, a lot of people had kids in or around the same age, around the same time, or like a couple of years ahead, right? Like, share that stuff, right? Like, we have been gifting family stuff that Legend has grown out of. Families have been gifting our stuff. Like, don't be too big or too good or too fancy for hand-me-downs, because these kids are growing out of this stuff rapidly. And we have the means to buy my son whatever he wants, the nicest stuff, but it's honestly no point. And I feel like some people who are in some of the most compromising financial positions tend to want to keep up with the Joneses and buy things that really don't need, right? Your kid, it doesn't remember it. He or she isn't thinking about it. Just make sure that it's clean and that it fits well for their age. But other than that, don't waste or spend a lot of money on clothes. And that's something I just intuitively knew going into it. But you know how it is. Like, you never know, like, oh, it's my kid gets the world. And not to say that there might not be a point when I'm like really into it. I want to dress my son up like me, get his swag right. But what I'm saying is, from a financial perspective, it's just not a top priority, right? Allocate that money towards investing, right? Something that can actually be beneficial. Allocate that money to making sure that you can get an estate plan updated or even started, right? Here's a bonus one. If you do not have life insurance, make sure that you get life insurance, right? Because the last thing that you will want is something to happen to you and your family can't be appropriately taken care of, right? So make sure that you get life insurance if you don't already have it. That should have been one of the number one things on the list, but I'm glad I remembered it before the video concluded. Make sure that you have life insurance, right? So do those 6 things in your first year of parenthood, or wherever you are on your parenting journey, to make sure that you can set your kid up for success. And again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Financial Freedom Fastlane, where the quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to live it.